Hello again. Well, today we're going to work more subtle anatomy. I'm going to help you to understand how to do that and how to check for it. So I want to also say thank you to all of you who are subscribing and all of you who are commenting. I'm trying to get back to a lot of the comments and answer some of the questions. I appreciate it very much. So pass these on too if you want. Please share them with people, particularly if they're working in these fields. It'll broaden their scope of work and probably help their skill level to be raised a little bit when they have a little more intuitive sense for working on the body. So with that, Angie is here again today, and we're going to work on different parts. I'm going to show a little bit more into the shoulder area and down the arm, and a bigger neck winding possibility that you can do. And I'm going to show a little bit of visceral work as well on the abdomen. So we'll get started. When I move up to the shoulder and arm area, oftentimes where I start is down at the wrist. And I lift the wrist up and just get a feel for how the lower arm is moving, just rocking it back and forth. And then I'd give a little stretch. There's a little notches right here, right below the hand. And what I do here is I stick my finger in that little notch on both sides and just give a little traction on the arm and kind of sweep it downward and then pull the hand upward a little bit with a little traction, just to feel the flexibility in the wrist, and also give a little traction pull with the fascial structures up the arm. So when I'm doing that, I'm also stretching the fascia that is going into the forearm, and when you get a little bit more practiced at it, you can also feel it going up into the upper arm, but it's not a big pull. It's just this little nudging of that space at the base of the hand. Okay, and then I'm going to check by putting my hand underneath the elbow and holding that, clasping the hand here, and just checking the range of motion on the elbow. Now for the elbow, you want to feel inside of the joint area, so you want to get into where the joint is and just feel the shoulders moving with it a little bit, mainly in the shoulder area. It will move somewhat with the arm, with the lower arm, but the lower arm does have this pronation, supination type of movement so the hand can flip up and flip down. But then when you start to bend it this way and moving it around, the shoulder is going to have to be a little more involved, because this, like the knee, is a hinge joint. We're not really releasing anything here. I'm going to go back underneath the elbow and carry the elbow here. I rest it in the palm, kind of the palm of my hand, and just get a little bit more movement out of it. Now when I take the arm up, what I do is I usually set my knee up onto the table, and then I'm going to lift the arm, the upper arm upward, and follow. Sometimes the shoulder wants to move a little bit because it doesn't necessarily want to go straight up. So you just kind of want to follow the line of the fascial patterning. And I feel something in the wrist. I just felt something in the wrist let go. And when I can get the arm up to the top, I'm going to rest it on my arm. I'm going to rest it on my leg, her arm on my leg, and then I'm going to be able to have access here to below the scapula. This is going into kind of the subscapularis muscles, and we're going to release in here. This other hand is placed on the top part of the scapula. You're feeling just on the ridge of the scapula on the top arm. The bottom arm is going to slip underneath where you're partly on the scapula with the fingertips, and then your thumb is going to be going, this is the scapula where my thumb is, so my thumb is going to be going subscapularis here, and I'm going to be balancing it with the top hand where it is on the upper ridge of the scapula, and then the bottom ridge I'm holding kind of in an upward position, so the scapula is somewhat lifted in my hand, but it's just resting in my hand too, but it's a little bit of a lift off the table. And then my thumb is going to go in deeper and deeper under that scapula until you can feel the engagement of the muscles, and then you can begin to kind of lift that up a little more and feel some little bit of rotation in the scapula, which is going to move the arm. So you're going to have to follow with it, with your body, and allow that shoulder to move in this direction in different circles. Okay, so now to get a little bit deeper under to the scapula, you want to pull that up and bring your hand all the way under and the other hand all the way under, so that you're on the scapula now all the way to the medial edge of it. And then I hold with my thumb, with the palm of my hand, base of my hand against the scapula here. And here I'm going to feel the scapula rolling back and forward and around. And this is just loosening up the muscles. The farther you can get in to the edge of that scapula and get into those tissues where the muscles are attaching, the better. But if you can't, this is mainly about just feeling the movement and the fluidity of the scapula. Now remember that the scapula is attached primarily with muscles, so there's not really any joint there except the joints here and here. So now with the arm, with the scapula a little more open, I'm going to move the arm back and I'm going to cross it over the body. Now here you want to be sure that you're resting the arm into your hand, and this is going to pull across, pulling, it's kind of a urging of going around and down. So you're pulling down on the shoulder as you're crossing over. And here I'm going to have to get out to her hand, so I'm going to pull it around and down so that the stretch is going to go on the arm, but the shoulder is going to stay lowered. And then you can move it upward, around, into the circle. Catch that if you can. And down. And then I like to take it, there's a little bit of resistance in the bicep, not bad. And then you take it back around and up. Now this, when people have shoulder problems, it's important to move around the shoulder in different ways, because the shoulder is a really complex structure. It moves in so many directions. So that's the way you can loosen up the shoulder and take it into some range of motion. And back up. Now here I'm not resting it because I'm moving it. Now here I'm going to lift it up a little bit and then rotate the shoulder by going inward, around, and the shoulder will come up a little bit, and then, so this is a rotation in the shoulder joint and around and down. You can do that 2 or 3 times, and then bringing it down, following the way it wants to come down, still unwinding it as you come down, which is, I'm just following a lot of her movement. The arm being lighter than the leg has a little bit different feeling to the way it unwinds. Plus the arms are utilized more than the legs, so their movement patterns tend to be a little bit quicker. And then pulling that traction again, and the traction as you go up is a little arc, so you're feeling like you're pulling in a little arc, and then you can place the hand back down and come back up here and check up underneath, and then check in the tricep, in the trapezius area, and that feels really good in through there, a little bit tight but not bad. Here's a little spot, so then you can loosen up here. Sometimes after the arms are moved a little bit, the muscles have had to move with it. They're showing themselves a little quicker as to where there might be a little tension, because they haven't been static, they've been moving. And then also checking the joint here and the joint here, and making sure, and then you can grab the shoulder here and just see what these 2 joints and the shoulder is going to do. And you can see maybe a little bit of movement here because there's some aligning happening. This area is the only place that is attached to the skeleton where the arm is concerned. The rest is musculature, so it's very important to have that clavicle in the right position. And there's a little bit of movement, and your hands will be light on there, but you want to still hold it with some amount of, you don't want to be too loose when you're holding to rotate, but you don't want to be real tight and forceful. There was another little jump in the sternoclavicular joint, and now there was a jump here. So the clavicle took a little bit of an alignment. It shifted itself just a little. And here I'm just checking the movement of the shoulder, which is primarily the muscle around it, but I am getting into the joint. There's one more where I'm going to cross this hand across her body. I'm going to slip my hand underneath to her scapula. Can you just lift up a little bit? Because I don't have a sheet under her, it's sticky, so I had to ask her to lift up. Now my hand is cradling her scapula underneath there, and I'm just going to let it sink into my hand. And then once it sinks into my hand, I'm going to pull a little traction downward with the scapula and roll that shoulder kind of around that way. You're pulling that scapula down, but it's resting in your hand, so it's a very slight traction, just similar to the sacrum. And here you're making sure that the shoulder is staying kind of rounded and back, because you want the shoulders to be up and back. You don't want them to round forward. And so then you pull that little bit of a traction. You're just influencing that traction with a very slight pulling around of the shoulder after you've got everything aligned in the clavicle area. And you'll feel a little bit of a stretch coming, and that's good. And then there's a lot of muscle activity going on right now. There's a lot of jumping around on the medial side of the scapula, probably in the rhomboid area. And there's some movement about. So you'll feel that movement happening at a very subtle level. And then when you're feeling like you don't have any more movement, or it feels like it's pretty open, then what you're going to do next is you're going to position your body into the table so that you can lift up with your shoulder and pull it up and back, drop it down, and slip your hand out. So you've repositioned the shoulder. It's much flatter to the table. And then you do one more time, stretching this back and giving a little pull. So that helps the structure, and her hand can go across the stomach. It can be wherever it's comfortable after that.
She moved me in a way that sometimes I'm careful of doing to not hurt myself, but she did not. I was not hurt at all, and I was able to have my range of motion with my muscles relaxed. And I love listening to her voice, and what she's saying helps me tune into my body. I'm really interested in hearing my body and connecting. And so sometimes she would say there's a pulsation, or there's a jump or a movement, and I don't always feel that. A couple of times I did, but what was happening that I felt more of is when she was working on one side, I was feeling the other side. So like when she was on the scapula, and like reset that or whatever the body did, this other side was over here making like not a sharp thing, but it was almost like it was saying, hey, wait, I gotta catch up, or you should go back to how you were, or something. So I really found it interesting. She worked on one side, but it was the other side that I was often hearing the most of, in the physical realm anyway, that I could feel those sensations. So I want you to notice here, this is the shoulder that's been corrected. You can see how it's pressing down nice and wide and open in this area. This is the shoulder that hasn't yet been corrected. You can see it's more upward, it's being pulled upward from tension, it's more rolled forward, and it's actually higher than this shoulder. So that's the difference of the subtle work that we did, and that much correction happened in the anatomy. So that's the subtle structures that have changed. They're reorganizing, and then the rest of the structure, the muscles and everything else, can be built on top of that new alignment pattern. So she won't be wearing and tearing things out of alignment. And basically I do the same thing, but sometimes I do it a little bit differently because the body will be demanding something a little different. But basically all the bases are still covered.
So here we're just loosening that wrist, giving a little stretch there, seeing how that works. Then we move into the elbow area where we're checking the lower arm and getting right into that elbow. When you deal with injuries in the arm and shoulder, the elbow alignment is really important to check. And I'll just show you here to check that elbow alignment. You want to get your fingers right into that joint area, and then you'll just hold the bicep or the tricep area, and you just allow that to see if that joint wants to move in any way, because it's a hinge joint, so sometimes it wants to move. And then we can move to here, bending it in, and then just seeing how the pattern wants to go. Yeah, it's pretty smooth. Sometimes I've seen people who have had what's called a frozen shoulder, and I've seen them go to other therapies for months and months, and it doesn't seem to unfreeze. And what I noticed is there's two things. One is moving the lymph out of an area so that there's fluidity instead of a kind of gel in the fluid system. And the other one is getting into the subtle anatomy and aligning that little tiny bit of structure. And surprisingly, when I'm allowed to really do the work that needs to be done, sometimes people don't really understand it, so they guide you in a different direction. But I've seen the frozen shoulders go away really quickly, even after one lady of 18 months of weekly work didn't seem to do much. So that's just another reason why I feel the subtle anatomy is so important. Bringing the arm up and setting it across my thigh, and then checking into the joint, bringing the hands, the fingertips up and under to the edge, and then, yeah, thanks. And then the thumb and this side will be on the edge. Yeah, you're good there. And then the thumb going into that scapula. It's the subscapularis area. So if you don't want to push into it, but you just go, there's also a lot of lymph nodes in this area, so you want to be very gentle going in here. You don't push in, you just like hold, and then you begin to meld in, and I can feel the top hand, there's already some shifting going on, probably in the levator muscle, or the attachment. And now she's pulling me in, and as you can see, my thumb is going deeper in, and it's directing me down toward the bone. That little thing I just did was the skin was beginning to pull. Now she's pulling me even deeper into that shoulder. There's a lot of pulsing going on at that subscapular area. So as you can see, I'm fairly deep in there, and there's a lot of movement in this shoulder, which is shifting and rotating and kind of wiggling around. At both hands, I feel it at both hands, so there's a connection there. That feels really good. Okay, and so taking a little bit more time with that, coming back up, checking. And like I say, there's no 1, 2, 3 ABC patterning here. You have to be more intuitive with what you're doing. You need to pay attention to focusing just on their body, getting your head out of the way. And when you get to a certain point of development with this, you'll know before it even happens. You'll be able to pick up on the body before it even really tells you, because it's almost like an intuitive communication between her body and me. There's a lot of movement between the two areas with this, and it's pulling in very deeply here in the thumb area, and there's a lot of very subtle unwinding going on. checking it as it goes, letting it kind of unwind as it comes down with the shoulder. And the shoulder is already beginning to replace itself. It's already in a different position. You stretch that out and then check out the joints here with the shoulder, sternoclavicular. And I like to just, after a while, I show you what I do, but you'll find the way your hands will work, things on the body will kind of fit. And when you feel like you're in a comfortable position and you fit, then you're probably going to be doing the best amount of work to be able to feel what you're trying to do with, or what you're allowing the body to do. And it's doing some definite unwinding. The clavicle is straightening itself out, working itself. I'm just going to check that, a little rotation. So now my hand is right on her scapula. She's laying into the scapula. It's cradled in there. It feels similar. It actually feels similar to the sacrum. And now I'm going to take that backward kind of motion here, up and back, as I traction the scapula. But the first thing that you want to be sure you do is that you meld into that first before you do any tractioning. Let it just fall into your hand and let it rotate until it feels like it's got itself a little bit in a more aligned position, or where it feels happier. It's just hard to explain the subtle anatomy. This is one of the most difficult things to teach, because you can't really see anything, but there's an awful lot of activity. It's kind of like a swan. It doesn't look like there's a lot of work going on, but under that water there's a whole lot going on. Those little feet are flapping. Okay, so now I'm going to hold my body into the position along the table so that I can support myself, and then I'm going to lift up with the scapula and bring it down and bring that shoulder up and back, and then slide out and take a little stretch here, and then bring that back up. And it's more open, so you can take a look at how that is. And that shoulder is down flatter. The shoulders are much more level with each other. We're going to do a neck unwinding, so that'll probably even this out better. The positioning of this shoulder has definitely shifted, and you can see this whole area here, it's much more open. So the heart and the energy from the heart chakra, the energy from just all this area, the breathing, all of that is going to be so much better. Now that's tied into this up and back position that I have mentioned earlier in videos. The up and back position, this allows the shoulders to just rest up there on top of the rib cage. The rib cage being filled with air, you're being suspended in air. You're only attached right here, so this needs to float. And then you have a lot of movement with your shoulders and arms, because the stabilization is down into the core, into the abdomen area, and that part of the body. So with that, I think that looks really good. I'm pleased with how she's corrected. She corrected very quickly, and that's also because she's able to let go into the body and trust her body to do what it is. As she's open and all this is happening, it's happening because she has allowed me as the therapist to do this due to trust. And there's a supernatural kind of thing that goes on when a therapist is going to touch a body. Is the body knows exactly what the therapist is capable of doing and not capable of doing. And there's a trust that is like a bond, contract that is made on another level of our existence that is saying it's okay, and I will honor you, and it's okay. But that's something that happens that you can't do in your head. It's something that happens in your heart, and it begins to flow as part of the thing that's going on in the whole area of everything. So bear that in mind, and I'll talk to you more sometimes about why it's so important for the therapist to have themselves in a very good position because of the energy flow that they're giving. And that involves quite a bit, but I'm not going to cover that right now. Now that the shoulders are in a better position than they were when we started, they're more open, the muscles are far more relaxed than when we started. Her alignment is really good because of the work we did last time with the hips and legs, so she's in a very good alignment. But we're going to move a little bit into the neck and unwind that in a different way. Right here in this notch here at the sternum, the thing that you want, where you want the chin to rest, is directly, the middle of the chin is directly there. And so you see there's a little bit of misalignment there in the head, just a little bit, not much, but it seems to be the pattern where the neck wants to be, and that could be from the shoulders being in a little bit subtly misaligned position. So I'm just going to check the musculature first, and I also like to do the occipital base release, but I don't go into it too much. I just cradle the head and then allow and get the fingers under the base of the skull, and then just allow the weight of the head and the neck to just fall into the fingers. I don't push up, and I'm not holding in any way. I just want that tissue right at the base of the skull to relax so that the neck will have a little bit more ease in its rotation. And that's beginning to let go. That is a very tight spot on all of us. And she's a little bit tighter on her left. And that's opening. And now we're going to just place the head and run the fingers along there. It's much softer. And the other spot you can check is you'll go under with the 3 fingers on the, on the cervical vertebrae, and just hold in between those bones. It's kind of, you don't have to be exactly between them, but you're spread so that there's space. And then you can check the hyoid bone just to give a little bit of looseness to the front of the neck before we go into this winding, unwinding. And let that kind of move around, and you'll be feeling a lot in both hands. It just kind of wiggles around. Stay very light. Keep backing out with the physical, pushing in with the energy. Don't push in with too much force with the energy. There's ways of telling if you're in your head or not, because you'll actually feel something in your hands if you're using the energy. Otherwise, it's just all imaginary in your head. And okay, now I'm going to pick up her head and cradle it in one hand. This other hand is going to go underneath the neck, and now I'm going to give the head a little bit of traction, so it's going to be an easy little traction toward me, and then I'm going to lift the head slightly and begin to rotate it. And you want to go really slow with this, but keep that traction going, and then you can roll it to the side, and you want to keep moving your hands and keep that head cradled. And around to this side, pulling and letting that, there's a little bit of stiffness in her neck, but not bad. And then we want to rotate it the other way, keeping that, and it will be drawing in a different direction. So don't just think it goes side to side. There's little tiny movements in here. You can stick your finger in alongside the musculature in the back hand to stretch the muscle as it's moving. So you're going to start to develop a lot of different little skills, kind of like a piano player, the way that their fingers move on those keys. It's not like moving on the keys, but it's where your fingers have to be pretty nimble, and a lot of work comes out of those fingers and just unwinding. And you take that unwinding, when you come to the end where it feels like there's not going to be much more of a movement, you just give it a little more traction and a little more of a stretch, and you'll find that it'll go a little further. And then the other side, same thing. As you're turning, this one is going to want to go, this wants to go up a little bit, and around here we're coming into maybe some feeling like she's at risk a little bit, or got her neck on the chopping block. And there we go. then up and back. So you're lifting the head upward, placing that hand and letting it hold as it goes down. And then stretch and up and back. And then rotate a little more and then place the head. And let's see what happens here. So here we have the notch and here we have the chin. And you can see it's right there in a line. It's in the right spot. It's not to the side.
I can do stretches, but sometimes the neck seems most persistent in tightness for me. And I thought it was interesting that she said, oh, she might feel a little at risk. It was just a small little statement. I really like the emotional piece in it, so I kind of perk up when she says that. But I do have the tightness in there. So after she stretched and worked on me, it almost felt like my body was in a little bit of rebellion. Some parts felt like they wanted to go back to how they were. My neck, when I was in alignment, it felt like I wasn't in alignment, and I'm sure that's because I hold it in a different pattern normally, or when I'm feeling at risk or whatever's going on. So I actually feel like I have a workout on the left side of my neck in particular. It feels kind of stretched, but almost like fatigue from a workout. So it's kind of relaxed, but it knows it got something on that side in particular. So I think it seems like everything's learning to talk to each other in a different way, and I am open to that.
So I hope you enjoyed that, and we're going to move on to the abdomen next.
I'm known to be sensitive to almonds and coconut, and so I ate them before I came because I thought, well, if she works on my shoulder and neck, I'm just curious what if my gut would respond, because I'm a little bloated right now. And so I told her that before the session, and that's when she said maybe we'll work on the abdomen area a little bit.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for the thumbs up. And I think there's a little bell up there that you can hit that you'll get a notification every time we post. So if you want to, you can hit that too. But thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it.